There are many songs and ballads floating around Ireland. Many of these have been lost, but many of these have been captured. Bill O'Brien, also known as Bill the Bard, is a musician and ballad singer, and he has written a book called Lost Songs of Tipperary, collecting old, lost and forgotten songs. And he joins us now. Bill, thank you for your time today.
Hi, thanks Arthur, thanks for having me.
Bill, first of all, tell me a bit of background. We'll make this short and sweet. I want to understand as much of it I can about your love for music in as short a time as possible, because time is short, as I say. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your love for music. Tell us a bit about it all.
Okay, so I've been playing instruments since I was a young teenager. My father bought me my first bass guitar when I was 13 years old, and it's since then it's something I've always had in my hand. I've always had a very, very deep love of music, creating it, listening to it. It's something that's always helped me to relax and to focus. And since then, I've kind of dabbled in a very wide range of music genres and different production types. I've been a DJ, I've played in bands, I've worked behind the stage, I've been a sound engineer, all these types of things. And in the past, probably in the past 5 years or so, I've really kind of turned my direction into traditional Irish music, in particular singing. We have a very rich culture of oral storytelling in this country, and the sitting around in the kitchen and singing songs to each other is something that's deeply important to the Irish identity, and it's something that really started to began to resonate me in a very real way. And yeah, so I've probably spent the past 5 years deeply immersing myself in the types of songs that the Dubliners would sing, or the Clancy brothers and that kind of thing. And after a good few years of attending singing sessions around the country, mostly in Tipperary because it's where I live, but I do travel quite a lot for these things, I started to notice that I was hearing a lot of the same songs everywhere I went, and I thought there must be something I can do about this, because I don't like to repeat myself. I'm not a man that likes to repeat myself, so I started looking for more obscure ballads. More obscure songs, and the more I looked, the more I began to find, looking at places like the Schools collection on duchas.ie has quite a large repository of old songs that used to be popular in the 1930s, that maybe, either nobody sings them now, or maybe one or two people might know them. So I started to collect these type of local, very, very local songs. These local as in, this could be down to the crossroads, not even less than the local village, but the actual crossroads out the way from the village. And I started to bring these songs, figure out how to sing them, and take them to the singing sessions, tell people the stories, tell people how I found this song. And I found that people were really, really interested in this.
Okay.
That obviously I wasn't the only one that was getting a bit, I won't say bored, but wanting to hear something new that was old as well.
Okay, let me just quickly jump in there. I have a question for you. A ballad. How would you actually define a ballad? How would you describe a ballad as opposed to a standard song? What is it that makes a ballad a ballad? What makes it different and unique?
Okay, so a ballad is a story told in chronological order to a tune. So you're right that there is a difference between a ballad and a song. A ballad is always is the story in the order that the story happens.
Straightforward enough. So tell us about the richness of ballads and what you've learned, what you've researched. Ballads in Irish culture. How is this made up Irish culture? How has Irish culture been reflected in ballads throughout the years, particularly in Tipperary, from the ones you've captured, the ones you've found? Is there generally a central storyline, or could a ballad be pretty much about anything?
So one of the reasons why the Irish we're so closely associated with ballads in particular goes way back to the penal times. So in from the 1700s up into most of the 1800s, Irish Catholics were forbidden to learn to read and to write. And we also weren't allowed printing presses. Almost all of the printing presses in the country at the time were Protestant owned. So there was a need for a medium by which Irish Catholics in particular could share their stories in the local news. This took the form of ballads. The balladeer, the singer, took the place of the columnists or the radio hosts in disseminating news. So if something of note happened in one village, if there was a battle or if there was, some newsworthy event, rather than relying on the local newspapers to report on it accurately, which they almost certainly didn't because there was a lot of sectarianism at the time, someone would write a song about this, telling the story in the chronological order. And these ballads would, through traveling musicians and traveling singers, work their way up and down the country. And this is how people stayed informed. It was literally, because back then there was no internet, there was no Facebook feeds, or there was no television or anything. This was one of the only ways that people could actually share news with each other.
Okay, so tell us what you've learned going around. You've travelled around Tipperary. Your book is entitled Lost Songs of Tipperary. What have you learned about the time, what has been captured for these ballads? First of all, how have these ballads survived in terms of until now, in terms of documenting? And what have you learned about these ballads? What have you captured? What does your book tell people about the life of the culture of Ireland, the life of Ireland, and indeed the stories themselves?
Oh, I've learned an awful lot. For one part is how lively the culture was back then compared to how it is now. Tipperary, particularly North Tipperary, where I'm from, is one area that was devastated by the famine. That we were hugely depopulated at the time, at a point that it's quite hard to conceptualize. At the time, the census, the last census before the Great Famine, was more people living in County Tipperary than there was living in County altogether. And after that, we've been absolutely decimated since then. And looking at the richness of the rebel activity that happened, that was going on back here at the time, it really kind of opens your eyes as to how much certain areas of the country were affected by the famine. And this is very clear from looking at the oral history, and particularly of North Tipperary. This is very apparent from looking at the richness of oral history, particularly before and after 1847. In terms of where I'm finding these, the most prevalent is the schools collection, collection. Just a quick explanation. 1836 to 1839, the Irish government of the Free State at the time gave every single national school students homework to go speak to their grandparents or their parents and to come back to school with a little piece of local folklore. And this is all types of folklore. This could be a leprechaun story or a haunted house or a cure for some disease or something like that, or fortune telling. But there's a lot of poems and there's a lot of songs that are included in this. And I spent a lot of time searching through the school's collection, looking for old songs that would have been known in the 1930s that maybe nowadays maybe are not known anymore. I also spend a lot of time looking at old newspapers, because that was, as I said earlier, singing and songwriting was a huge part of culture up and down Ireland at the time. And a lot of the newspapers did print local songs and local poetry. A lot of it is absolutely terrible, but there is some absolute gems there still. And that's another place where I'm finding them as well.
So, your method of collection, how have you actually recorded these? Tell us more. When people open your book, what will they experience? What will they read about? Describe it more to us. It must have been some amount of work putting all this together.
It was, yeah. It was a lot of history. It was an awful lot of historical research has gone into this. So the book has about 55 different songs in it. And what you can open up a page and you can see the title of the song. If I have managed to identify the writer, I'll include that as well. But a lot of the time, that's not the case, because a lot of the time, if a song was a bit seditious or a bit critical of the Brits, they wouldn't want their name included in it in case they, received a free ticket to Australia for their efforts. I've also included notes to which melodies I think that they can be sung to, and I'm very certain about some of these melodies. Some of them I'm not 100%, but it's kind of down to analysing how it's written, the meter, the rhyming scheme, and these kinds of things, and narrowing it down to existing melodies. As well as that, Where possible, I've included a bit about the history of that particular song. If the writer was well known, I've a bit of history about that particular writer, and also some historical contexts for the stories that the songs themselves sing, so that they could be properly understood, which I think is very important. Like Irish oral storytelling is as I said, very, very important to our identity. And each of these songs, being a ballad, has got a very important story. Many of them are battles, many of them are stories of rebels who committed certain acts of rebellion. And I think it's important to put these into their proper historical context so that people can actually understand what happened in our history.
Okay, so in terms of people using these ballads, using these songs, tell us about the format in terms of keeping the material alive, keeping the music alive. Is it possible through what you've documented for people to actually be able to sing, to be able to experience this music in a way?
Yes, absolutely. And this was I've written I created this book with that particularly in mind. There's a lot of there's quite a lot of publications about collections of songs that are very kind of academic and very dry, that you'd want to be nearly an academic in that particular field to be able to properly understand it. I've written this to be as accessible as possible. So in terms of the melodies, like you have the lyrics there, and I've included everywhere possible where I can identify a melody. It's something that you can put into YouTube and find, like another song that has the same melody as the ones in the book, that you can immediately find easily on the internet, and the actual melodies to these. You don't need to be able to read music. You don't need to be a singer, and it's something that anyone can pick up. Have a look, have a quick Google, and sing along the words from the book.
Okay, so tell me about your journey so far in terms of getting this book published. Tell me what has happened so far from the very beginning, putting all this collection together, getting it into a format. How has it happened for you so far?
Well, it started off with me just attending singing circles, and trying to bring something new every week. So I'd go home, I'd find something, I'd come back, I'd ask older the older generations, have you ever heard this? Can you tell me anything about this song? And trying to collect as many little snippets of information as I possibly can, and doing my best to perform the song for them, and listening to criticism, taking my notes. And I tried to do that every week to bring something new that I'd found in a newspaper or on the school's collection. And after a few months, I'd kind of realized I've actually built up quite a collection, and I think this is actually quite significant. Um, and I was thinking about ways that I could share this wider than just myself going to a session once a week. So I started a podcast, which is called the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast, where each episode I pick a couple of songs that I've revived, or that are very, very rare songs, and I tell a kind of a story about they'd be about a similar theme, and I tell a bit of the story about the theme, explain the historical context and the social context, and sing the songs, record the songs. And that's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of the other podcast platforms if people are interested in that. And after a couple of years of doing the podcast, I really kind of thought this can be a book. This could actually be a book rather than a CD, because nobody buys CDs anymore. No one's in everything's online. And I thought, and as well as a book has permanence, it's not a piece of digital information floating in the clouds. Once a book is released, it's on people's shelves for. I have books in my own collection that are 150 years old. So if anyone in 150 years time, if this is still up on people's bookshelves, I'll be very delighted. It's also in the libraries around County Tipperary as well, so that it is going to be preserved, and it is going to be enjoyed by future generations, many to come. So after the idea of the book, I started putting it together. I started slowly sifting through my collection of songs that I'd collected from the county, and picking the best ones. I wanted to have all areas of Tipperary represented, because Tipperary is a very big county. It can take you 2.5 hours to drive from the north to the south. It's a very big county. So I didn't want to have, everything centered around one area. I wanted North Tip, South Tip, East, West. And I wanted to cover a variety of different topics, from, the kind of happy-go-lucky songs about a beautiful girl from the village, or rebel songs about immigration, the famine, sad songs. I wanted to have a good broad range of the different subjects. And once I was happy with the collection that I had and the historical notes on them, I decided to run a Kickstarter campaign. A Kickstarter is a fundraising platform. So I put up a bit of information about the book, what I was doing, what I hoped to do to raise enough money to get it printed so that I could distribute it myself. I didn't have any luck approaching publishers because I think the idea just seemed a bit out there, and it was a big risk for me as well. So I felt a crowdfunder kind of lowered the risk for me. If I could crowdfund the printing, the rest I could do myself without risking, without taking a huge financial risk. The Kickstarter campaign was a raging success. I managed to raise more than I asked for, and as soon as I got paid out the money for Kickstarter, I sent it off to have it printed. That arrived back in March, and since March, I've almost completely sold out of the first run of books, which has far exceeded my expectations. Like, I really thought that I'd be lucky to sell 20 or 30 copies to the kinds of people that are specifically enthusiastic about Tipperary ballads, which are people that I know, people that I attend singing sessions with all the time. But it does seem to have really hit a note with people, not just in Ireland, but abroad as well. I've had a lot of orders from the United States and the United Kingdom as well. So yeah, it's been very, very humbling. I am almost sold out of the book at this point. I do have to order a second, make a second order for them, which is just so encouraging, and I'm so grateful for everybody that backed me in the first place when it was just an idea, and I'm so grateful for everybody who's bought a copy of the book and shared kind words with me.
Okay, so just to synopsize, perhaps a question that many might have asked you, maybe even the question the publishers themselves might have asked themselves when they received your idea for your book. Why bother all this? Why are you going to all this effort to preserve this information? Why? In effect, I'll be the devil as an advocate. Why bother? What's the point? What are you trying to achieve, and what has been achieved through this book, which you've seen to be a success?
Well, first of all, it's a great passion of mine, and I think to create anything creative, any form of an art, you have to be deeply passionate about it, and I'm very, very passionate about local songs and Irish storytelling, and as well as that, I think I want to play my part in preserving this material. History is not something that just happened in the past. History is something that we're all creating right now. And I kind of felt a duty that because I'd done a lot of the work and found a lot of these songs, breathed new life into them. There are songs in this book that I know have not been sung out loud for generations. And the fact that I'd gone through that work, I didn't want that to go to waste. I wanted to honor the original writers of these songs, who many of whom were persecuted during the penal times. I wanted to honor their work, and I wanted to make sure that this was preserved in such a way that current and future generations could access it once again, rather than just hear it. Rather than Irish music being defined as the same 20 or 30 drinking songs that you might hear, I wanted to expand that, and yeah, it's mostly a work of preservation for me.
Okay, so as we finish up, where can people find a copy of this book? How can they get their hands on it?
Okay, so I am self-distributing. I don't have a publisher, and I don't have a distributor, but I have got quite a few bookshops in Tipperary selling this. I don't actually have one in Cork, though that is something I need to go down to Cork and speak to a few. I'd say for your listeners, online is the best bet. There's Kenny's bookshop, Kenny's.ie have got a few copies there that they can sell you online. And there's a shop called Bookworm in Thurles that have quite a few online as well. Or if you want to buy one from me directly, I've actually got mine on my eBay account. And you don't need an eBay account for this. If you just go onto ebay.ie and search for Lost Songs of Tipperary, you'll find it there. And I can post that out directly to you. And if you want a signed copy, just put a note in there and I can do that for you as well.
Okay, musician and ballad singer Bill O'Brien, also known as Bill the Bard. Thank you for taking time to chat to us today about your book, Lost Songs of Tipperary.
Thanks very much, Arthur. It's been a pleasure. And thank you.